All right, so picking up from the bell ringer, you see your answer right here in green. I asked you what was the Third Reich. Third Reich was the Third German Empire, the reunification of all German-speaking people in Europe. And of course, with fascist people today and of the yesteryear, you know that many of them very well would have used revisionist history to try to do one or two things, as I explained to you in the lecture today. Is that the first thing that they usually try to do is say, okay, I need to eliminate my opponent's history, or I need to change history to better suit my future, or better suit what I'm trying to do in the present as a politician or as a leader, dictator, whatever. And so, this Third Reich thing was based on lies. The first was during the Middle Ages. There was no German Empire during the Middle Ages. There was no peaceful unification of Germany in 1871. And so, especially with him saying the Third Reich will last 1,000 years. Moving on. So, militants gained control over Japan halfway around the world. Nationalistic leaders were seizing control of imperial government of Japan. Like Hitler, they desired living space for their growing population, the Lebensraum. Japan in the 1930s was plagued with right-wing patriotism, weakening of the democratic processes, domestic terrorist violence, and steeped up military aggression. They even tried to assassinate Hirohito once, which is the emperor of Japan. And he began a military buildup with several attacks on China and a dream of Pacific domination. So you also had here Hideki Tojo. He was the prime minister of Japan and a key leader in deciding to launch Japanese warfare in World War II. He was the reason for the Pearl Harbor attacks. Is going to be something in the lectures later on. But for now, he's responsible for the military aggression of Japan. So Japan attacks China and through the area, or at least the province of Manchuria, which is like roughly twice the size as Texas. And Texas is a big old place. This is Manchuria. This is China, or at least moving into China. And so for Japan to kind of attack from this area, uh, and for China to not have known how to react at this time, it just creates future issues, especially when we get to the Cold War. But for now, we're just dealing with World War II. Aggression begins in Europe in the early 1930s. Both Japan and Germany quit the League of Nations. If you can remember that the League of Nations was responsible for trying to not allow for another world war to occur. It was supposed to be the war to end all wars. And then the League of Nations is created by the 14th point of Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, uh, trying to just create a world peace organization. But once Germany was not invited to the Treaty of Versailles, and Japan decided to leave, and the irreconcilables, if you will, decided that the United States was going to try to remain isolationist after World War One, leading into the Roaring Twenties. That we already know that the League of Nations was null and void. So Hitler began his huge military buildup, very possibly with the money that was given to the Dawes Plan. By 1936, Hitler sent troops to the Rhineland, a German region bordering France and Belgium that was demilitarized by the Treaty of Versailles. So Hitler is already making his aggression in Europe, whereas Hirohito is making his aggression in Japan. It's only so long before Russia and Italy began to do their aggression. But for now, what's happening in Spain? Last time we talked about Spain, they got their butt kicked by the United States in the Spanish-American War. And so now they're having their own internal conflict. They can't afford to really fight in World War II. They're fighting, for their democracy, to which they partially lose it through General Francisco Franco. Remember, you can always go back and pause a lot of this stuff, or you can always go back and write as much of this stuff as, or however much you want to write as you can. But I encourage you to only really write the green, just like in class, or the bullets that have green in it. And so in this case, he would be writing the whole slide. So anyway, he was a fascist leader in Spain, and you could always pause and go back. Like it's not like I'm lecturing in front of you. Uh, Franco's fascists win the Civil War. The Spanish Civil War led to a closer relationship between Germany and Italian dictators. So Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco signed an alliance known as the Rome-Berlin Axis. Underline highlight, put a star next to that. So where they agreed not to go to war with each other. For the art people, Pablo Picasso painted this picture called Guernica, which captured the brutality of the Spanish Civil War and the fascist government. It's pictured with a bull that was supposed to like run through Spain, and that bull was actually supposed to represent, the fascist aggression. Um, so Ferdinand is a storybook bull who loves flowers. He was banned for being too nice. In the story of Ferdinand, the title character refuses to spar with the matadors in a bullfighting ring. During World War II, Italy and Soviet Union and Germany saw his story as a pacifist propaganda and banned it. And so that's kind of like, the Disney movies, and even the Disney book, Ferdinand, it's all the same. These movies were produced at a time too, in American history where we were pretty much at odds with Russian aggression during a particular time. Just what, 3 years ago now, 2 years ago with Ukraine. So the United States remains neutral for now, with memories still fresh from World War One. Most Americans believed that the United States should not get involved in increasing aggression in Europe. Some critics believe that the banks and manufacturers were pushing for war solely for their own profit. Critics called them merchants of death. FDR basically tells the United States that we're neutral and we're friendly. He tells the rest of the world that. FDR's policies in the early mid 1930s reflected a desire to remain out of the growing conflict in Europe. Mind you, in the 1930s in America, we're going through the Great Depression. We got other stuff to deal with. And so he recognized the USSR diplomatically. They even exchanged ambassadors. We're still at the height of the Great Depression. None of that means anything. We're still trying to figure out how to feed the hungry. And so he lowered tariffs, which, the Howley Smoot tariff was passed by. What was that? Not Warren G. Harding. It was the other guy, Herbert Hoover. He passes these high tariffs, thinking that that's going to help support the United States businesses, but many businesses close down because they can't afford the taxes. And so FDR comes in, lowers those tariffs. Now other European countries maybe could lower their tariffs, but now they're focusing on dealing with the war. And one thing you don't want to mess with the United States is our money. So if we can't make money, then we're gonna have to do something. So he withdrew armed forces from Latin America momentarily, and so the United States stays neutral, or at least they try to stay neutral. Congress pushed for neutrality as well. Looking at the political cartoon, you see the United States sitting there on the couch, where his wife Europe is standing over him. And then you see war at the door, and United States is saying, yeah, in a minute. Like United States at the time, even FDR had an inkling that they were going to be involved some way somehow, and Congress was trying to stall that for as long as they could with passing the Neutrality Acts. Underline, highlight, put a star next to that. It outlawed arms sales or loans to nations at war. So if you were at peace, yeah, we could do business with you. But if you're at war, to keep us neutral, to keep us from picking a side, we're not going to do business with anybody for now. So United States neutrality is tested after Japan renewed attacks in China in 1937. FDR sent arms and supplies to China, which was the top buyer of U.S. goods. And it's funny how times changes, because now the United States is the top buyer of Chinese goods. I mean, look in the classroom right now, look at your book bag, look at your phone, look at what's probably in your hand. Even if you're watching this, some of it is probably manufactured in China. And so, back then it was the other way around. Anyway, he got around to neutrality acts because Japan had not actually declared war on China, so they weren't quite, quote unquote, at war. FDR promised in a speech in Chicago to take a stand against aggression, though. It's interesting that FDR is talking about taking a stand considering he had polio. Moving on. So another section, we're looking at the war in Europe, late 1937. Hitler was anxious to start his assault on Europe. Austria was his first target. The majority of Austria's 6 million people favored the unification with Germany. And because, remember, Austria was like the little cousin that got the, king assassinated, and Germany jumped to their side during World War One. It was like the spark that started World War One, the assassination of Francis Ferdinand. So they welcomed unification with Germany. March 12th, 1938, German troops marched into Austria unopposed. A day later, Germany announced its union with Austria. And so Adolf Hitler had this inkling that if he could invade every country like this and everybody would welcome him, then, there's no need to really use the military. And we would just show the rest of the world, particularly showing Britain, France, and the United States, is what Germany is saying, that I could just march on in and look, they're letting this happen. It's more of us than you. But that wasn't the case. So you have the Munich Agreement. Hitler then turned to Czechoslovakia. Munich Agreement underlined, highlighted, put a star next to it because Germany invaded Austria and Czechoslovakia unopposed with permission from their allies. So about 3 million German-speaking people lived in the western borders of Czechoslovakia called the Sudetenland. Hitler built up troops on the border. Appeasement, underline, highlight, put a star next to it. It's in red. It's an important term. It means to give up principles to pacify an aggressor. One of the things that when you pacify someone, I have a 1-year-old as of, now, and she is interesting because whenever she gets a little antsy, you know what I'm saying, I can, play with her and make her shut up, or, what I'm saying, or I could, maybe give her a snack or something like that to get her to shut up. But the real only thing that I could give her to shut up for a moment is a pacifier. And that's what appeasement is. I'm just trying to hold you off for just a little while until I can really figure out what's wrong with you. Maybe you need your diaper changed, or maybe she needs to eat, or maybe she's just tired of looking at me. I don't know, but I have to really figure out what's wrong. And so it gives me a little time to figure out what's wrong. That's what the policy of appeasement is like. It's like pacifying. And one thing I know about my daughter is that she understands when she's being appeased. Every time I give her a little pacifier, after a while, she's spitting that pacifier out and she starts to scream louder and gets more angry, more antsy. So let's just take that into consideration of calling Adolf Hitler a little black girl. Anyway, Hitler makes the deal. Then, just as an attack on Czechoslovakia seemed imminent, Hitler invited French leader Edward Daladier and British leader Neville Chamberlain to meet with him in Munich. Italy was there too. And in Munich, he promised that the annexation of the Sudetenland would be his last territorial demand. And so guess what they did? They actually agreed on those terms. I always thought that this was funny too. It was the first known use of the term of OMG. It was written to someone whatever. But yeah, I always thought Winston Churchill, yeah, he's going to be a big deal for being the prime minister of Great Britain. We'll talk about him later, but for now, he used the term "oh my god" in 1917. Like, who does that? He also said "gobble up." I'm just going to leave that right there. Moving on. So German offensive begins. Despite the Munich Agreement, Hitler was not finished expanding his German empire, as we know. March 15, 1939, German troops poured into the what remained of Czechoslovakia. At nightfall, Hitler declared Czechoslovakia ceased to exist, so he took it over himself. And his next target was Poland. So Germany invaded Poland. Poland was allies with the USSR, Britain, and France. Many thought Hitler was bluffing because an attack on Poland would surely bring the USSR, Britain, and France into the war. As tensions rose over Poland, Stalin shocked everybody by signing a non-aggression pact. Underline, highlight, put a star next to that term. It's with Hitler. Basically, he said that the USSR would not go to war with Germany, and they became friends. They became, buddies, if you will, as they're tied up at the ankle. They were once bitter enemies. Now, communist Russia and fascist Germany vowed to never attack each other. And it's interesting because this isn't going to last very long, but I did not want to talk you all's ear off on the day that you all aren't at school. Just get what you can get, or at least while I'm not there anyway. Get what you can get, and you all should be able to take notes or pause this and go back however you need to go. And we'll pick up from here on Tuesday, like literally from right here. So don't be pissed off if I, you know, go too fast or whatever on when I see you all on Tuesday. Anyway, I love you all. Take care. Have a good day. Learn something.